America will lose to China. The US lost its breath in the race for influence in Africa. Welcome to Eagle News Channel. In the competition for influence in Africa, the United States appears to have been out of touch with reality, and it is currently battling to catch up to China on the regional geopolitical chessboard. The United States Department of State's assessment, made when announcing the United States-Africa Summit that will take place in Washington today, is that Africa will create the future not only for the people of the area, but for the globe. December 13th to 15th. At the occasion, which brought together the heads of 49 African countries, Vice President Joe Biden of the United States led a discussion with those African leaders about a variety of steps that may be taken to improve relations between Washington and the area. On the 14th of December, when speaking at the U.S.-Africa Business Forum that was held within the framework of the summit, Vice President Biden made a commitment to the audience that the United States was prepared to invest in the future of the continent. The last time a president of the United States sent an invitation to a summit to be held in Washington was in 2014, when Barack Obama was serving as president. According to the opinions of various experts, the United States has seen many ups and downs in domestic politics over the past 8 years. Furthermore, the United States appears to be slowing down in the competition for influence in Africa, whereas China is continuing to strengthen its position in the region. According to Gustavo de Carvalho, a senior fellow in African governance and diplomacy at the Institute of International Affairs, inviting African heads of state to visit Washington does not mean that the United States has a chance to fulfill its goals. This statement was made by Gustavo de Carvalho. Commentary from South Africa International, SAIA. According to a statement released by the United States Department of State, the purpose of the summit that is taking place in Washington this week is to, among other things related to development, enhance the policy of economic access and promote regional peace and security. The Vice President stressed that the United States of America's goal is not political ties and enhanced reliance on Africa. Rather, Washington's goal is to develop partnerships, share successes and prospects. Observers have come to the conclusion that the U.S. leader's message was referring to the infrastructure investment and resource exploitation projects that China has offered to African countries in the recent past. These projects have been met with many doubts about their long-term viability and large trade-offs. When Africa achieves its goals, so does the United States. Everyone in the world will be successful, Biden stated. According to Cameron Hudson, senior fellow of the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, SISE, in Washington, the United States is currently in a position on the strategic chessboard in Africa where it can chase other great powers. According to Hudson's argument, China's approach to Africa is guided by certain priorities, such as the sale of business transactions and armaments. In the meantime, the United States asserts that they are making holistic investments in Africa, although they have not demonstrated an interest in any single industry. Africans are really interested in economic development, and China is the one that impresses them the most with the Export-Import Bank of China, said Hudson. Where are the United States in this area? It seems that almost no one in Africa is familiar with the Export-Import Bank of the United States. Gustavo de Carvalho contends, among other things, that the interest shown by the administration of Vice President Joe Biden in the region creates the impression that the world's preeminent superpower views Africa as a geopolitical battleground without appreciating the material advantages it offers. According to his analysis, it will be impossible for the United States to create a successful relationship with Africa if it places the objective of maintaining a balance of power with China as a priority in its activities. The federal government of the United States has pledged to developing trade agreements with a total value of more than $15 billion and has planned to invest more than $55 billion across the entirety of the continent. However, in addition to financial investments, the United States is interested in seeing Africa make a stronger push for reforms, with a particular focus on the importance of robust governance in relation to commercial activity. The long-term goals that the United States of America is striving for, as well as the macro-geopolitical calculations in the great power competition, are said to be unrealistic when compared to the urgent requirements of Africa by specialists. An excellent illustration of this is the objective that the administration of Vice President Joe Biden presented at the summit, which was to tackle climate change while simultaneously fostering economic growth in Africa. As a means of assisting the world in the process of carbon absorption, the rainforests of the Congo are regarded as an essential component of this ambition. However, the government of the Congo supports handing over most of the forest to oil and gas companies, citing the argument that the country's impoverished population requires quick revenue to satisfy their pressing requirements. The majority of Africans are still suffering with the story of getting their daily bread and having enough money, so the story of preventing climate change and saving the earth seems unreachable to them. According to Gustavo de Carvalho, the majority of African nations believe that developed economies like the United States are to blame for the current state of the environment and that they should be held accountable for their actions. The countries of Africa want fairness on a variety of problems, one of which is sufficient recompense for damage done to the environment. It is not enough for the United States to exert pressure on African nations. Instead, they need to engage with those nations to create a solution that will work for everyone. Environmental problem, he stated. According to Giancarlo Elia Valori, an Italian international relations expert who works at Peking University, China has had numerous policies in the past that are right at the urgent requirements of Africa. Valori is a member of the Peking University faculty. According to a report that was published in 2022 by the Foreign Policy Research Institute, FPRI, in the United States, China extended around $126 billion in loans to African countries between the years 2001 and 2018, bringing the total value of direct investment, FDI, to $41 billion. The majority of the financial flow is put toward investments in the expansion of infrastructure and the extraction of natural resources. During the global outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, China was also the top country in providing vaccines, medical equipment, and financial assistance to the continent. China consistently adheres to the principles of respecting sovereignty and not interfering in the internal affairs of African countries when it is working with African countries. These principles demonstrate to African nations that China respects their right to make their own decisions on the children they raise. Proper development route, he had written. This week, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin issued a warning to the leaders of African nations, saying that China and Russia are creating instability on the continent, namely through big projects backed by China that lack transparency. Officials from the United States have often voiced their fear that unregulated investment initiatives from China will exacerbate existing issues of corruption in African countries and impede the region's socio-economic advancement. Giancarlo Elia Valori, on the other hand, is of the opinion that it will be difficult for U.S. officials to convince African leaders to support their anti-China policy advocacy. This is especially true given the fact that the African continent is in need of solutions that will expedite development and quickly improve people's living standards. The current government of Vice President Joe Biden needs to come to the realization that the United States needs to alter its strategy toward the continent. It is necessary for the United States to persuade the political and corporate elite of Africa that it is prepared to engage in fair trade with the continent, Hudson stated. Support the channel by like and share the video. Don't forget to press the subscribe button and the bell to receive the latest news. Thank you for watching.